Hello, I'm Jacob from Tide Reads, and I have a book shopping problem. Alright, so I have like this little bit of a problem of like buying books and then slowly reading them, but buying them faster than I can read. So today we're gonna go through my entire owned TBR. It's a lot. It has been piled on for like 2 years now. My goal is this year to get through like 80% of the bought books. But you know, book shopping just supplies serotonin, and we need, by we, I mean I need that every once in a while because life isn't giving it to me, so why not bookstores? You see, most of these, I'd say like 50% of these were bought from half-price books. Barnes & Noble, and then a few of them are from Book of the Month. But other than that, let's get into it. I'll split this video up with timestamps down below for each genre. They're in rough genres, they're not in like specific genres. This is just like what I would categorize them in. Other than that, it's gonna be a free-for-all, so buckle up. This isn't gonna have much descriptions, it's just gonna be like, maybe let's do like title, author, and like the reason I bought it, if I can remember. All right, let's get into it. All right, so the first book is Steelheart by Brandon Sanderson. I picked this up because it sounded awesome and I thought it'd be a good place to start for him. Next up is Girls of Paper Fire by Natasha Nan. Picked it up because I've heard about it on BookTube and I thought the cover looked awesome. Next up is Strange the Dreamer and Muse of Nightmares by Laini Taylor. I picked this up because my sister gave it to me and I wanted to read it, and so here we are. Next up is His Dark Materials book 1, 2, and 3. I bought it in a box set at Half Price Books by Philip Pullman. It was cheap, so I said why not? I wanted to read them before I watched the show, so here we are. Next up is Eridine by Jennifer Saint. I got this from Book of the Month. This was this May's book. Picked it up, thought it sounded interesting based off of what it's about, so here we are. Next up is A Hero Born by Jin Yong. This is a translated fiction, bought it at Barnes & Noble. I'm gonna be honest, a lot of these are gonna be cover buys, but I like that when you put all the spines together, they make a dragon. Next up is The Inheritance Trilogy by N.K. Jemisin. I've read book 1, which was The 100,000 Kingdoms, but it's a bind up of all 3 books. So here we are. Bought this because of Reagan from Peru's project. She sold me, and here we are. Next up is The Graveyard Book by Neil Gaiman. I bought this because I wanted to get into his work, and I thought I like this cover the best, so I want to get the rest of these in this series like this. Next up is The Demon King. I saw this walking around on the shelves. Thought it'd be an interesting YA fantasy, and as before I decided I don't really like YA fantasy, but here we are. Next up is The City of Brass by S.A. Chakraborty. I mean, first of all, the cover, stunning. Second of all, the plot, sounds interesting. I thought this was a YA fantasy, so I was about to get rid of it, but then it's not. So here we are. I'll have to read this soon. Next up is An Ember in the Ashes by Sabaa Tahir. I got this at Half Price Books. I've been wanting to read it. It was cheap. A lot more. Next up is Black Leopard Red Wolf by Marlon James. I got this at Half Price Books. I loved the cover, looked at the plot, sounded interesting. Now here we are. Whew. Almost there through fantasy. Next up is Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell by Susan Clark. I'm gonna admit a lot of these are my fantasy or from Reagan or other booktubers like Booked and Busy from Aaron. So that's where I got this one from. Looked great. Here we are. Next up is the first 3 in the second era Mistborn by Brandon Sanderson. We got, I don't think this is in order. We got Bands of Mourning, Shadows of Self, and The Alloy of Law. I think that was completely backwards, but it's fine. Got this because Era 1 has my heart, so we're moving on. Next up is Legendborn by Tracy Dion. I saw this from Olivia on Olivia Reads a Latte. Sounds amazing. Here we are. We're gonna read it and enjoy it. Next up is Spinning Silver by Naomi Novak. Got it from Book of the Month. I've heard great things. I needed an extra credit, so. Next up is The Unspoken Name by A.K. Larkwood. I bought this because of basically the title here, Priest, Assassin, Traitor, which sounds interesting, and the short blurb on the flap sold me even more. Elantris by Brandon Sanderson. I got it because I'm trying to read the Cosmereverse, so this is like the first one which I need to read. Next up is Upon a Burning Throne by Ashok K. Banker. Saw this on Jesse's channel from Bowties and Books. They really sold me on it by their rant of books BookTube sleeping on, so gonna have to add this to the next TBR. The Shadow of the Gods by John Gwynne. Aaron from Booked and Busy was reading his other series. I wanted to get this one first because it's about Norse gods, and I find I'm playing God of War, so Norse gods are kind of like my intrigue at the moment. The Black Prison by Brent Weeks. Saw this again on Peruse Projects channel right again, so I mean, it just sounds interesting. They control light. The Knife of Never Letting Go by Patrick Ness. Got this at Half Price Books. I wanted to read this because I wanted to watch the movie, and I thought, no, see what better. Next up is The Priory of the Orange Tree by Samantha Shannon. It seems, I've heard so many glowing reviews. First of all, a dragon, female romance. What more can you want? Final Brandon Sanderson is the Stormlight Arc, The Way of Kings, Book 1 in the Stormlight Arc. Book 1 in the Stormlight Archives. I got this. This was my first pickup from Brandon Sanderson, and I was like, oh, I'll just read it. You don't need to read everything else. It'll be fine. And then I got too intimidated, and now here we are. But now I love his writing, and here we are. The Blade Itself by Jill Abercrombie. I just heard glowing reviews, saw it at Half Price Books, and thought I'd pick it up. Last one in fantasy, A Clash of Kings by George R.R. Martin. Book 2 in A Song of Ice and Fires. Moving on to our science fiction category, we got Invictus by Ryan Grodin. I got this at Half Price Books. Has something to do with time traveling. Read it, DNF'd it, but I want to pick it back up again. The Disaster by M.K. England. Saw this in my local library, and instead of loaning it out, I bought it at Half Price Books. So make that one make sense. Next up is 84K by Claire North. Saw this at Half Price Books, and look at this stunning all black cover, so I had to pick it up, right? The Toll by Neil Shusterman, Book 3 in the Arc of the Scythe. I mean, had to finish the trilogy. Still haven't read it though, so. Exhalation by Ted Chiang. Short story collection, science fiction. I've only read one, wanted to get into more. Saw this at Barnes & Noble. Picked it up. Neuromancer by William Gibson. This is like I believe a founding book of cyberpunk subgenre. I wanted to get into that, so I picked it up, and I mean, I love the cover. But that's not what I got it for. Next up is Velocity Weapon by Megan O'Keefe. Saw this on Erin's Booked and Busy's Instagram story, and she sold me on it, so I had to pick it up. And it was at Half Price Books, so I mean, it was destined to be. It was like it was calling me, and I just had to fulfill that prophecy. I couldn't turn away. Next up is Artemis by Andy Weir. I read The Martian in high school, I think. Loved it. Wanted to see if it was just that book or other books by him. So I'll be reading this and maybe his new one for something. Next up is Contagion by Aaron Bowman. I was looking for science fiction. This is a YA science fiction. Not sure if it's going to be my thing, but we're still going to give it a try. Next up is The Beautiful Dune by Frank Herbert. Heard about the movie coming out. Wanted to read the book before the movie. Heard great things, so we'll find out if it is true or not. Next up is The Aeronauts Windlass by Jim Butcher, book 1 in the Cinder series. Saw this in Barnes & Noble originally. Then I was like, oh, it sounds interesting. It sounds like this steampunk kind of book, so I picked it up. Haven't read anything by Jim Butcher. Went to Half Price Books, saw it there, and I was like, oh, I have to fulfill that prophecy again. I can't turn away, you know? It's kind of that vibe. But I haven't read any Jim Butcher. Hopefully this is a good start. We'll find out. Next up is To Sleep in a Sea of Stars by Christopher Paolini. Got it at Barnes & Noble. Tried to rip off the science sticker. Left a weird sticky residue, so slap that sucker back on. But saw this on Erin's Booked and Busy channel, and the rest is history. Next is The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy by Douglas Adams. This one's illustrated by Chris Riddle. Saw this on Olivia Reads a Latte's channel. I know this is like a very popular science fiction, like one of those like first ones you read, so I'm gonna read it, gonna get into it, and I saw this at a bookstore and I said, why not? It's pretty. Next up is Docile by K.M. Spara. First of all, the cover made me do it because of the color, and then I found out what was it about, and I was like, oh, interesting. So I'll have to get into this one more. And our final science fiction is The Parable of the Towns by Octavia E. Butler. Spoiler for the wrap up, the first one was so good. So I had to pick this one up and I'm gonna dive into it ASAP. Moving on, we are now into our mystery thriller category, which this is a really bad one because I watch books in Lala and then I'm like, that sounds amazing. She sells me on it and then I pick it up. And then I'm like, oh, I'm not really into thrillers at the moment because I'm like, that's a fall thing. But I need to tackle like a bunch of these because they all still sound so good. So here we go. Book one is Inferno by Dan Brown. I mean, I love Da Vinci Code, Angels and Demon movie. Read the books, absolutely loved them. So saw it at Half Price Books for $3, couldn't turn it around. And then guess what else I saw? The Lost Symbol, which is the next book, which I saw again at Half Price Books at a different time for $3, and I couldn't turn around and say no because I gotta finish the series now. Next up is The Lost Man by Jane Harper. This one I think I would DNF the most because it just doesn't sound as interesting, but then I read the synopsis and then I'm still a little wishy-washy. If you read this, let me know down below what you thought of it and tell me if I should keep it or not. Next up is Cult X by Fuminori Nakamura. Saw this at Half Price Books as I was scanning the mystery thriller section. I mean, honestly, the word cult kind of got me into it. So now I'm kind of interested. I believe it's a translated work of fiction, so I'm going to have to dive into this. Grown by Tiffany D. Jackson. I didn't realize this was well, no, I knew this was a brand new release, but this was at Half Price Books for like half the price. Hence the name. So it was a steal. I was basically robbing the place. I had to take it. The Sanatorium by Sarah Pierce. Saw this. If this is the book that I correctly remember, I can't remember or not, but I saw this on Meg's channel from Meg with Books. It sounded so interesting when she sold it, so she sold me, so here we are. The Woman in the Window by AJ Finn. It just sounded so interesting. There's another one I got at Half Price Books, cheap. It sounds like one of those like staple mystery thrillers, so I had to snatch it up. This Southern's Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires by Grady Hendrix. Olivia Rizzolatto sold me on it. I feel like it's a very summery book, so I might have to read it in the summer. That might be my summer reading plan. And Shifting from Summer to Winter, One by One by Ruth Ware. I liked The Turn of the Key. It wasn't my absolute favorite, but I'm interested to see if maybe it was just like another book, but also the cover is stunning, so I had to buy it. But I haven't read it, so here we are. The Family Upstairs by Lisa Jewell. Saw this at Half Price Books, heard some great things about it, picked it up. Clearly I haven't read it. Another Ruth Ware, The Death of Mrs. Westaway. This one kind of sounds a little more intriguing. Saw it at Half Price Books and I figured might as well just snatch it up. These next two I got from a friend's friend. They were getting rid of it, so I said might as well, you just pick it out. You just pick out what you want, what you don't want. Surprise me with two books. So I got Watching You and The Girls in the Garden, both by Lisa Jewell. Another one is from Book of the Month is Arsenic and Adobo by Mia Pimensola. I mean, the cover looks beautiful and intriguing, and it sounds like an interesting plot. And I think it's like a cozy mystery, which I could be very wrong, but it sounds kind of intriguing. I don't know if I'm a fan of cozy mysteries, so here we are. Next up is A Project by Courtney Summers. Read Sadie, liked it, pretty good. This one covers gorgeous. Again, a cult. Love a good cult. So here we are. Next up is I Killed Zoe Spanos by Kit Frick. It's a gorgeous cover. Sounds intriguing plot. So I snatched it. Another book of the month is Winter Counts by David Hesco Wendley Whedon by an Indigenous author. And the plot sounds interesting. I think it's like a courtroom mystery. So I love a good courtroom. Here we are. Next book of the month is Last Fight by Julie Clark. It's about this, like, I'm not giving synopsis, I already said this, but sounded interesting. Here we are. Last book of the month is The Survivors by Jane Harper. The cover looked good. I didn't realize it was the book of the other book that I was thinking about getting away. So maybe we can, like, hope this is a good one and save it. Final mystery thriller, I say this one for last because it's so gorgeous, is The Devil in the Dark Water by Stuart Turton. I read The 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle and absolutely loved it, so I'm hoping this is another great one. I've just been putting it off because I'm like, it's not right, but I think it's time. I think it is. Next is a very short category. My one like horror book is It by Stephen King. Next up is contemporary fiction, which I believe most of these are contemporary fiction. I think there's only like 2 of them that may include some fantastical elements, but I just put them in this because fantasy was getting a little long. But we got, the first up is The Office of Historical Corrections by Danielle Evans. It's a novella of short stories. So next up is The Final Revival of Opal and Nev by Donnie Walton. I think I've heard it as sold as like Daisy Jones and the Six, but with black leads, which I feel like that could be wrong, but I think it's right. Correct me if I'm wrong. Next up is A Birding by Megan Majumdar. The cover looks stunning. Picked it up because the story sounds interesting too, so I figured, what the heck, might as well. The Book Thief by Marcus Suzak. I've had this book for what feels like ever. Attempted to read it in high school, couldn't get into it, so I need to do a take 2 on it. Next up is The Serpent King. I walked into Books A Million, saw it for $1, and I said, might as well. Great deals, you can't turn me away. I love a good deal. Oh, this is by Jeff Zentner. I read Goodbye Days. It was okay, it wasn't my favorite. The Nightingale by Kristen Hannon. I saw this at Half Price Books A Million for buy one, get one half off. Wanted to get into her books. I've heard this is a great one. Actually, no, I didn't. Sorry, I thought I read one. Haven't. Not So Pure and Simple by Lamar Gills. Beautiful, 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 beautiful cover. But I just haven't been in the mood for contemporary fiction lately, so I need to like get back into it. Next up is The Midnight Library by Matt Haig. If you haven't, everyone and their mother has been talking about this, so I've joined it, apparently. And another one that's nonstop talking about is The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab. I love V.E. Schwab. I've read a couple of her books, and we're going to dive into more. We're almost there. Last handful of books. We're almost there. Here we go. Quickly, a classic. Dante's Inferno by Dante Alighieri. I've had this idea to do something along the lines of Dante's Inferno. Heard a lot about it. Wanted to get into it. Honestly, I should just get it done and over with because it's short. It's like in stanza form. So next up is comics and graphic novels, just because I'm not sure what category they fit in. I've read a couple. I want to read more, so if you have any suggestions, let me know down in the below. If you have any suggestions, let me know down below. First up is In Real Life by Cory Doctorow and Jen Wang. I mean, the cover looks beautiful, the art style looks great, and sounds like a good plot. Next up is Paper Girls by Brian K. Vaughan as the writer and Cliff Chiang as the artist. I mean, I've heard so much about it. It looks stunning, and I had to pick it up. Just had to. Finally is my bought nonfiction books. I usually like to just listen to my nonfiction in audio format while I'm like driving or walking. It's easier for me to absorb it. But a couple of these I bought because I wanted to put tabs and like make marks as I was listening to it, just because I find nonfiction a little harder to get through, but maybe that's just because I haven't found the right ones yet. But first up is White Rage by Carol Anderson. I mean, everyone was talking about it last year. Picked it up recently because it's been sold out forever. And this is going to be one of my priorities because I wanted to read at least one nonfiction a month, which it hasn't been going well. Next up is Sapiens by Yuval Noah Harari. I got this years ago, and as you can see, I've only gotten to page 25. So I want to read more. The first 24 pages were very interesting, but it's a dense one because it's very scientifical. And our final book on our long journey is Hood Feminism by Mickey Kendall. It's another I believe it's another anthology type book with all about notes from the woman that a movement forgot, which is very important. If you don't realize, Black women were the original fighters for feminism, and they often get written out of history. So I'm gonna read this. This might be my May nonfiction book. So there we are. Thank you so much for sticking along. If you have stuck around for this long, let me know any books that you think I should put on my priority list before I do my summer TBR. Any books that you found interesting. Any books I should get out of here because they wasted your time. Don't want to waste my time. If you made it this far, put a book emoji down in the comments down below. I hope you're having a wonderful day, night, wherever you are. I hope you are doing great. Thank you so much for watching. Bye.